Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Menachos daf Sadi Vav. We are going to begin on Sadi Vav Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah, fifth line from the top. Regarding the Chaviti Kohen Gadol, so we know that the Kohen Gadol would bring a mincha, and he would split it machasisa b'boiker, half in the morning, machasisa ben arboim, half in the afternoon. So when it comes to the Chaviti Kohen Gadol, lishasan, it's kneading, very chosan, and it's forming, as well as v'afiyasan is mifnim. Everything was done inside the Azara. Now we mentioned in yesterday's daf that this is not the case when it comes to everything else. So, for example, when it came to the shtei halechem and the lechem apanim, the forming and the kneading were done outside, and they only baked it bifnim. And we said it was totally on this notion that does it become kedushas haguf at the time of it being put on the shulchan with regard to the lechem apanim, or is it even at the time of the baking, and therefore that becomes problematic if you did it outside the baking. So then all of a sudden it's kedushas haguf. But then we said if it's it should be daicha Shabbos then, because if you did it on Friday and it developed Kedushas Haguf, then it's a psulina. So over here, there's definitely an issue of a psulina, as Rashi says, V'divrei kol osu chatzi yisaron shahayicholot boy, esreinu shel kohen gadol nimshach. That kli was definitely sanctified, and therefore it's a kli sharis. And therefore, the reality is, once you begin the process by the Chaviti Kohen Gadol, it automatically takes upon itself Kedushas Haguf. The reason why it wasn't sanctified when it was complete, okay. So anyway, that's how they used to do it, and therefore, because of Adachas Shabbos, we understand it has to be Daicha Shabbos, because when it comes to the Chaviti Kohen Gadol, it can't be pre-baked before Shabbos, because if in fact it takes upon itself, which we're saying it does, Kedushas Haguf, so therefore you can't do it on Friday because it will be a psulina. You can't leave it over. Okay. V'daichas does Shabbos. However, that's only the later stages. However, Techinasan v'harik dasan enu daichas Shabbos. When it comes to the grinding of the wheat and the sifting, so that is not daichas Shabbos, because it's not put into a kli sharis at that stage, and therefore it's not an issue. So Klal Oimer Rabbi Akiva, this is a famous sugya in Rabbi Lezer de Mila in the 19th parak of Masechta Shabbos. So Rabbi Akiva says a general rule: Kol malacha she'ashas erev Shabbos indechas Shabbos. If you can do it before Shabbos and there's no psul of lina, like for example the grinding and the sifting, so then you don't do it on Shabbos, you do it before. However, Shiasher lo lasois me'erev Shabbos dechas Shabbos. You can't do it before Shabbos, so therefore you have no choice. You have to do it on Shabbos, and Daicha Shabbos, when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. Then the Mishnah says, Kol hamnachos yesh behen ma'asikli bifnim. So when it comes to the menachos, when it comes to the actions, it's all done in a kli sharis, which therefore makes sense why it has to be bifnim and not b'chutz. Ve'en behen ma'aseh kli b'chutz. So again, because if it was done outside, at that point it would develop a kedushas haguf, and therefore it becomes psul b'yaitze. You can't take it out. Shtei halechem. So when it comes to the shtei halechem, so we talked about again in yesterday's daf, the shtei halechem was done, the kneading and the forming was b'chutz, the baking was bifnim. So here it doesn't go into that. Now we just want to talk about what did the shtei halechem look like, the dimensions. And so this lengthy Mishnah will discuss a lot of dimensions. So the shtei halechem, which were the two wheat breads on Shavuos, archon shiva tvachim. Its length was 7 tvachim. Rachman dal tvachim was wide 4. The karnaisa, but the horn-like shaped dough, was arba etzba'os, was 4 fingers. However, the lechem apanim, unlike the shtei halechem, the lechem apanim archon was yud. It was lengthier of 10 tvachim. Rachman hay it was 5 wide, not 4, but 5. Tavachayim v'karnoisav shevetz boisav, and its horns were 7 etzba'os, as opposed to when it came to the shtei halechem, it was 4 etzba'os. So one's head could spin over here. How am I supposed to remember all this? Rabbi Yehuda Omer shelo tita, so I don't make a mistake. Zadad Yahaz, right? So interesting, like the Eser Makos, right? We see that apparently Rabbi Yehuda again will do this when it comes to remembering the measurements. So you don't make a mistake. You have Zadad, which is referring to the Shtei Halechem, that it's 7 Tvachim long, 4 Tvachim wide, 4 fingers. And then when it comes to the Shtei, that's by the Shtei Halechem. And then when we're talking about the Lechem Aponim, it's 10, 5, and 7. Okay, so I guess I'm not sure how that helps to remember that. It's just random letters, but again, it makes it a little bit easier to remember. Ben Zayma Omer v'Nasato al Shulchan Lechem Ponim Afnai Tomid. So again, some people explain it came to the Eser Makos. Again, we find Rabbi Yehuda Noisan Him Simonim Datzach Chadash B'Achav. We know that, but maybe in those days they remembered Zadad Yahaz just as much. I don't know. The pasuk says V'Nasato al Shulchan Lechem Ponim. That of course we put the showbreads on the Shulchan Afnai Tomid. So Lechem Ponim Shiulo Pinim, which means that it should have corners. Okay, let's look at Rashi. Shehilo pinim defanais, like literally walls. Okay, and it says on the side, v'shehilo pinim, which is zavyais, which are corners. That's what it says over there. Okay, all right. So Shulchan. So we talked about the lechem aponim. So we know the lechem aponim, its length was 10 tefachim and its width was 5. So listen to this. The Shulchan, which housed these lechem aponim, Arko Yud, it had the length of 10, v'rachbo chamisha, and its the Shulchan's width was 5, right? Which sounds again like the lechem aponim. Lechem aponim Arko Yud v'rachbo hey. So it sounds like the lechem aponim were the same dimensions of the Shulchan. So nois and arko keneged rachbo. So they would do is they would take the bread at its length, which is 10, and they would put it by its width of the Shulchan, which is 5. Shel Shulchan. The koifel tefachayim mechsa mekan v'tefachayim mechsa mekan. So obviously it folded over. It was larger on both sides, 5. So because of that, they would fold over the breads 2.5 tefachim on this side, 2.5 tefachim on that side, in order that it should be flush to the Shulchan. Nimsa arko memali rachba shel Shulchan. Therefore, we find that actually it lifted up the dimensions of the Shulchan. Dear Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda. Rameir Omer HaShulchan arko Yud Beis. Actually, the Shulchan was not 10 and 5, but rather it was 12. Rather it was 12 v'rachbo vav and 12 and 6. Lechem aponim arko yud v'rachbo hey. No one's arguing with that. That was definitely 10 and 5. So nois and arko keneg rachbo shel Shulchan. So kofel tevachayim mekan, you put again folded up 2 tefach on this side, 2 on that side, because this Shulchan, because its length was 12, its width was 6. So therefore, as it was turned around, so therefore you actually have a little bit more length. So even though it's 10, you only have to make up 4. So therefore it's 2 on each side. And there was space in between. So that was like air ventilation for the challah, the lechem, so it doesn't spoil. Actually, the space in between is where they will put the frankincense. Sholachem upon them. How could you tell me that you put it between, it says you put it on top, which sounds like on the top of the breads. So Amar Lahem Hari Kvar Namar, but the pasuk says alav mate menashe. Alav doesn't mean on top of, it just means near by. That's all it means. So it could mean, again, the Levina, the Zichel Levina, was also just nearby, which we saw also before. There's 3 places where al could mean samuch, and this had to do with the placing of the shtei halechem on the shtei kivasim. Was the top, the bottom, or the sheet was on the side? It was al, is besamuch. We also saw when it came to the pareichis, it says the word al, even though of course the pareichis is not on the aron. Okay, so those are different places, different things that we saw previously in this Masechta. So it's actually a machlokes where the bezichin were placed. Okay, so the arba senifim shel zahav hayusham. We know that there was these 4 boards, as we saw in yesterday's daf, that we had the senifim down each side of the shulchan. They had vertical supporters that stood alongside the lechem, and the supporters had notches that supported the kanim that ran across over each loaf. So each loaf had 3 kanim, and there's a question exactly how it was shaped, like an open box or like a boat, right? So it's different. We saw that before as well. So there's kanim, and then you had these vertical boards, these senifim. Shel zahav either gold sham mefutzlin merishehem. There was holes on the top for the pegs. Shel yisamchen behen shnayim l'sader l'seder zeh l'shnayim l'seder zeh. Okay. V'chavches kanim. There was 28 of these kanim. Kechatzi kana chol. Arbas are 14 of the 28 was l'seder zeh. Was for this side. Yodal l'seder zeh. L'seder kanim. It did not organize and set up. The Gemara is going to explain how many kanim were to each bread. We'll get into that. So, lo seder kanim says Rashi, b'mereches hachadasha v'netalten mial hayishana dayich hashabbos. So setting up these kanim or v'lo netaltem or removing them is not dayich hashabbos. We will not be dayich hashabbos. El nichnas me'erev Shabbos. You should go before Shabbos for shamta v'noisno arkoshel shulchan. You should basically set everything up before. Kol kalim shahayu b'mikdash arkan l'arko shel bayis. All the kalim of the base of mikdash, when we talk about its length, is the length of the bias, namely east to west. It says Rashi, you can go in Shulchanois, when we talk about the tables, arkan l'arko shel bayis min mizrach hamarv. It's from east to west. Okay. Says the Gemara. So kol menachos yesh behen ma'aseh kli min bifnim. So when it comes to menachos, it's all done inside, and therefore it creates on it a kedushas haguf. So sholas Rabbi Zuminayin. Like, how do we know the menachos require kli sharis? So Mahen Hari Kavar, the pasuk says V'yomer Elai Zeha Makom Asher Yavashu Shama Kohanim. This is the place where the Kohanim will cook, as chatas as a hasham. Asher afu as a mincha, they bake the mincha, vilti haitzias el chatzar hachitzayna, to not go out of the outer courtyard. So mincha dumida asham v'chatas. So we're talking about asham v'chatas, and we compare mincha to it because it says mincha also. So ma asham v'chatas tunin kli. We already know, of course, that when it comes to the dinim of v'chatas and the asham, they certainly require kli shar. So av mincha nami tunin kli. So that's how we learn out the drasha. Shulchan arko asar. So we said that the shulchan zamachlokas, is it 10 and 5, or is it possibly 12 and 6? So Omer Rav Yochanan, L'dirya Omer Tefachayim B'mechsa Kofel. That again, if it was 10, and then you took the 5, there are 10 and 5, and then you flipped it around, so length to width, so therefore it's protruding on both sides 2.5, so you fold them over. So Nimsa Shulchan Mekadosh Chamisha Aser Tefachayim L'mala. So because it's 2.5, so therefore what ends up happening is that it causes that it's Mekadesh 15 tefach above. So if you just do your basic math, and we're talking about 6 on each side, right? So you end up having 15, right? 2.5 on each side, and you have 6. So because there's 6 here and 6 here, so therefore it gets raised an extra 15 tefachim. So it's, or 2 times 6, so it goes up by 12. Lamala. All right. So we go to Rashi. V'nafkamina di'iyohi ba'aver hashulchan. If you put in the airspace, midi b'taich tasva, within the space, mekadesh l'subalina. So actually, that area above the shulchan also takes upon itself kedusha, the possibilina, any item that's in that space. So it's either 12 or 15. So whereas I va'ika kanim, there's these kanim which are between each of the bread, so it should be more. No, so kanim shikui mashkelhu. So these rods are inside of these indentations. So they don't really do much in order to be able to add to it. It doesn't lift up the breads. My time, mishum afushi lechem. So the whole reason, just so that the bread doesn't spoil, saif kama afish lechem. Understand, still bread's going to spoil. It says damagnule porta. It did go up a small amount. There was a small gap. Hu porta. So how about that little gap? Since it wasn't the amount of a tefach, so it's not included. But you're right, it is a little bit more than 15, a little more than 12. We don't mention it because it's insignificant. Right, so where the bezichin, apparently you put it on top of the bread, so therefore that should also elevate it. Marin says, no, it was actually put by the breads. So therefore, again, you're not really adding to any of the height because it was put together with the breads. So kranos gavoy de lechem kayafuhu, that these kranos by the bread was like folded to the inside of the bread, so it didn't contribute at all to making it larger. And those breads rested on it, if you will. Okay. As we continue to Amud Beis, Va'ika Maskeras. This is more in Sukkah as well. So the Shulchan had this decorative piece, possibly depending on what side it was on. So it was on the bottom, so it didn't add to the height. If you say the mascaras was actually above, which was also, you could have, apparently should be able to say it was pachas metefach, which is the Gemara in Sukkah tells us. Anyway, I'm not sure if Taisus alludes to that. We have long Taisus here. So if the mascaras was above, so parkudi havi mifrkda. So it was at a diagonal out on the side. V'lechem begavod the shulchan havi yasef. Kedesanya Rabbi Yosi Omer lo hayasham sinifim el miskarto shel shulchan ma'amedes es alechem. That's what held the bread. So lo miskarto lamato, so it was on the bottom. So Rabbi Yochanan Ladivri Omer miskarto lamato, so it was on the bottom. So tavla hamis hapeches, this is like a wide wooden board or a smoothed out tablet on both sides. So tameya l'dibra ha'imim miskarto l'malo ha'isa tavla hamis hapeches tiboilach. So without a base kibble, still it's tameh. Without a base kibble, since it's wide and can be used. M'chlal. This shulchan. Okay, let's slow down for a second. Let's look at question 7. So question 7. Kama tfachim shleimim ma'aviru haya hashulchan mekadesh. How high was it above the shulchan? So either 15 tvachim or 12 tvachim. Nafkamina di yoiv midi ba'aver hashulchan. You put something in that airspace within that shear to mekadesh it, and therefore it becomes kedushas aguf, and therefore it can be pasalit Belina. Okay, so that's something to be concerned about. All right. Maybe TB18. Let's just read it and let's see if this answers the whole question. Kama tfachim hashulchan mekadish milmala uvamez tolui. Right? So it was either okay, so now I understand what it was. So this is over here, right? This is TB 18. So we know that it was either 12 or 15, okay? And based on that, if it's either 12 tfachim or 15 tfachim above, so it's totally on, right? If it was folded, it's totally on how big the shulchan was, right? Right? It's totally on if the shulchan was 10 or 12, then you have to either fold it up 2.5 or 2. So I wrote 12 or 15 tfachim. That's not correct. So but I did it right between 12 and 5. This actually is correct. Oh, v'yeshmach ha'amos, not ha'amos, im hashulchan, right, was 10 tfachim or 12, right? Then you have to fold the bread 2.5 above or 2 above, right? And then you would have 2.5 times 6. 2 times 6 is 15 or 12. Okay, so that's TB18. All right, good. Great question. All right, let's keep on moving. So we're going to get to a pretty famous piece of Gemara over here. So it says like this. Mechlal the Shulchan Bar Kibuli Tuma. Who? It sounds like the Shulchan is shaykh to become Tameh. But it's Kli Eitz Asul Nachasu. The whole Kli Eitz Asul Nachas, they become Tuma. Right? When it comes to the Shulchan, it doesn't move. It's there in the Beis HaMikdash. It's never removed. And since it's never removed, of course I'm building up for the answer, then it's Kli Eitz, because the Shulchan is made out of wood. It's a Kli out of wood, but it's not moved. If it doesn't move, therefore it's not Mekabel Tumah, my time, because Dumin is sak, Bina, it has to be like sack. Mas sak mitaltel mali vareka, and it has to be able to be moved when it's full or empty, which means if it also is like a very large Kli, then it loses its sense of a Kli, because it can't be moved. Avkol mitaltel mali vareka. So therefore, apparently, the Shulchan is never shaykh to become Tameh. That's not true, because Shulchan Nami Mataltel Malav Reikim. Actually, we do move the Shulchan. It's not Nachas. It doesn't stay in one place always. Kedei Shlachish. Never Shlachish. Ma'nichsev Al HaShulchan HaTahar, the pure tables. So Tar Mechalad Ika Tameh. El Mulamin Shemagvian Oisil Oli Regalim. They would actually physically take the Shulchan outside and show it to Oli Regalim. And show them the bread. Ru'uchi baschem with their malchum. See how much Hashem loves us. Kedivri Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Nes gadol nasbalachem upon him. That was a great miracle that took place. Siluko kisidurai. Just as it was taken down, it was the same way it was put there, which means that it was as fresh. It was just as hot, just even though it was a week later. Shenemo some lechem cham b'yoyim hilakchoy. Okay, so it definitely is shaykh to become tameh. So it typically mishum tzipui, but it also has a gold plating. When it has a gold plating, says Rashi, dahavi mateches, it's like metal. Lo iskish l'sak. You can't compare it to sack. Afil asul nachas mekabel toma. So even if it would be true that it was stationary, it's not kliates, it's like mateches, it's like metal. And therefore it should be mekabel toma because it's sipoi. Milo tanan hashulchan, when it comes to a table, and for that matter, vaha dulbeki, which is like a leather folding chair, shenivchasu or shechifan b'shayish, if let's say you take it and you place marble stone on it, v'shir behen makam hanachas kaisais, and you left a place to put cups, so Tamein, Rabbi Huda Makam Hanachas Chatichos Shir in. Only the place where you can put those items. Lo Shir Lo. But if you did not put it there, then no. L'chayra, the shulchan is considered therefore tzipui, and therefore it should be a problem. Okay, because otherwise, if it was of shayish, it's considered tzipui shel avonim. The avni avonim will mekabli tuma. So it says kivan di'ishtayer be'kulei hai the chazim olachten rishon mekabli tuma. It is mekabli tuma. So your answer is it depends if it's a covering that could stand or not. In other words, let's say the shulchan is without nails, so it may not last. Right? So we go after its covering is only if it's oimed kavu b'masmitis. If there was nails, the shulchan shel kodesh lav oimidhu. So maybe it's not considered to be like matachas because it's not able to retain its covering because it's not an oimed because it doesn't have nails. So maybe it's not tamei. So we asked a series of questions. When we say there's an issue of tzipui, does it matter if it's with nails or without nails? How secure it is? And then Bishechifa asks, as we continue to Sadi Zainul Aleph, Lavaz Vazin, as we're talking about that the edge of the shulchan has a ring, like a rim around it. Obishlo Chayves Lavaz Vazin. Yermalei Loshnat Sipui Oimed, Loshnat Sipui Sheno Oimed. It doesn't matter if there's nails in it or not. Loshnat Chipes Lavaz Vazin, Loshna Loichif Lavaz Vazin, even if there's no rim on it. The din is the same. Now, when it comes to the shulchan, it shouldn't be bottle because it's something which is very chashiv. So, anichel reishakash der meloshna ella bekli achsalgus haboyim of dinasiyam. If we're talking about this cheap wood that comes from dinasiyam of a kli misames chashivi v'lo right? So if it's the case, then it's not bottle. So shopper Elul Rabbi Yochanan Yermekli Misames Nami Batli. He says that even if it's all nailed, it's still bottle. Michael Mamer. So Shani Shulchan the Rachmana Kari Eitz. It's not really matachetz. It's really that it's like wood. Shenemer Hamizbeach Eitz. It says beferish in the Pasuk Yecheskel that it's comparable to eitz. Sholosh Meos Gabo Arkoi 3 amos in length, shtayim amos, 3 amos in height. Its length was 2 amos, umiktsa'islo v'arko v'kiryoisav eitz. So the corners and everything else was of wood. Yedaber hilai zeh hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem. So pasach memizbech v'zam hashulchan. It's very strange. It's talking about a shulchan, but it also mentions a mizbeach. So here we have the famous Gemara in Masechtas Chagiga, the very end of Chagiga, on Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, mamash the last Amud. Rav Yochanan, Rabbi Lezer, Diamar Tavai, Mizmach, Beis Hamikdash Kayim, Mizbeach Mechaper, Al Adam. The mizbeach is what's Mechaper. V'yachshav Shein Beis Hamikdash Kayim, Shulchan Shul Adam Mechaper. So it's our shulchan that's able to achieve kapara. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at question 8. Matir to Gemara, Batam Hadavar. Dein hashulchan tahar milakabel tuma. That what is the reason it says that the table, this pure table, the ein hashulchan tahar milakabel tuma mishum kli eitz hasul nachas. So he said, well, maybe it shouldn't. It should. How's it shack to become tamei? It's only stays in one place. So that's not true because we're magbiya for oli regalim, which we know that's the answer. And then how do we know menom lo tevim mishum that sipoy matachas? How don't we just say it's an issue of it being out of metal? So there's actually two answers to this. Either you can't say it's an issue of tzipoi because according to Reish Lakish, he says these atishitim are chashivi. So we don't look at the tzipoi, we look at the eitz. Rav Yochanan says because the Torah just calls it eitz, right? So that's a another correct answer, but those are two answers. Question TA 15. Madua hashulchan mekabel toma b'Rab Shit Gleid saying mekabel toma. Right. So we know it's right. So how is that? So either because 15. I don't know what this answer is. Miskartel malohais of havle base kibul, o the tavla himisafeches tameya. I have no idea how that's the correct answer. At least it's a mistake, right? Anyway, so it seems more in line of what we said to question 8 to 8. I'll write this down. So it's kliyates. It's not mekabel toma, so it's not an issue because it's asul nachas, etc. Okay, Adkan.